Some promises are so easy to make when you're 10 years old that you never realize they might follow you for the rest of your life. That was the thought Nathan Carter would return to again and again years later, but back then, on a warm summer afternoon in the small town of Willow Creek, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The town wasn't much more than a few quiet streets, a church with a white steeple, a diner where everyone knew everyone, and a lake that seemed enormous to two children who spent every free day exploring its shoreline. Nathan and Claire Dawson had been inseparable for as long as either of them could remember. If Nathan was climbing a tree, Claire was climbing higher. If Claire found a hidden trail through the woods, Nathan was right behind her. Their parents joked that they spent more time together than they did with their own families. To them, friendship wasn't something they thought about. It was simply part of life, as constant as the sunrise. One evening, just before the end of summer, they sat at the end of the old wooden dock stretching into the lake. Their sneakers dangled above the water while the sky turned shades of gold and pink. Nathan skipped a pebble across the surface and watched it bounce 4 times before sinking. Claire insisted she could do better and managed 5. She celebrated like she'd won an Olympic medal. Nathan laughed so hard he nearly fell into the water. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Then Claire became unusually quiet. "My dad says your family might move away," she said softly. Nathan stared at the lake. He had heard the conversations at home. His father's new job offer was real. The move would happen before school started again. Even at 10 years old, he understood what that meant. Different schools, different lives, different futures. The idea made his chest feel strangely heavy. Claire picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. "You'll probably forget all about this place." Nathan immediately shook his head. "No, I won't. People always leave and forget. Not me." Claire looked unconvinced. The silence stretched between them while the last sunlight danced across the water. Nathan searched for something to say, something big enough to make her believe him. Finally, he turned toward her and spoke with the complete confidence only a child could possess. "Then I'll prove it." Claire raised an eyebrow. "How?" Nathan grinned. "One day I'll come back." She waited. And when I do, I'm going to marry you." Claire blinked in surprise before laughing. "That's your plan?" "Yep. That's a pretty big promise." "Then it's a pretty big promise." For the first time that evening, she smiled again. She held out her hand. "Deal." Nathan shook it without hesitation. Neither of them understood how much life could change. Neither of them knew how far apart the years would carry them. And neither of them could imagine that decades later, one of them would still remember every word spoken on that dock, while the other would be forced to prove he truly meant them. The hardest part about leaving is that most people do not realize it is the last ordinary day until it is already over. A week after their promise on the dock, moving trucks rolled into Nathan's driveway before sunrise. The entire neighborhood seemed quieter than usual, as if even the town understood something was changing. Nathan stood in the front yard watching workers carry boxes into the truck while his parents discussed directions, schedules, and arrival times. Everything felt rushed. Everything felt permanent. Across the street, Claire sat on her bicycle pretending to ride in circles, but Nathan knew she was really watching. Every few minutes their eyes met, and both looked away. Neither knew what to say anymore. The closer the departure came, the harder words became. By late afternoon, only a few boxes remained. Nathan walked across the street and found Claire sitting beneath their favorite oak tree near the edge of town. She had brought a small tin box covered in stickers collected over the years. Without speaking, she opened it and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What is that?" Nathan asked. "Insurance." He laughed. "Insurance for what?" "For your terrible memory." She handed him the paper. Inside was her home address, her telephone number, and a list of questions. Nathan looked confused. "Questions?" Claire nodded. "You have to answer one every month." "Every month. That is how I will know you did not forget me." Nathan smiled. "That seems easy." "Good." Then she became serious. "You have to promise." "I already promised." "I know. But promise this too." Nathan folded the paper carefully and placed it in his pocket. "I promise." For the next few years, he kept that promise. Letters traveled back and forth between Willow Creek and the city where Nathan's family settled. They wrote about school, favorite teachers, basketball games, science projects, and dreams about the future. Sometimes the letters were only a page long. Sometimes they filled several envelopes. No matter how busy life became, they always found time to write. But growing up has a way of changing even the strongest routines. Middle school became high school. Responsibilities multiplied. Nathan joined academic programs that demanded more of his time. Claire focused on school, friends, and helping her family. The letters became less frequent. Monthly became every few months. Every few months became twice a year. Then once. Eventually, there were long stretches of silence neither of them intended. Nathan always meant to write tomorrow. Claire always planned to respond next weekend. Somehow years slipped away. Yet every now and then, Nathan would discover the folded paper while cleaning a drawer or unpacking another moving box. He would stare at Claire's handwriting and remember the lake, the dock, and the certainty they had shared as children. By the time he graduated college, life was moving faster than he ever imagined. Opportunities appeared. Ambitions grew. New cities, new goals, and new responsibilities filled his calendar. But on certain quiet nights, when the world finally slowed down, he would find himself wondering the same thing. Was Claire still in Willow Creek? And if she was, had she forgotten the promise they made beneath a summer sky all those years ago? Nathan Carter spent most of his adult life building things. He built a career, built companies, built partnerships, and eventually built a reputation that opened doors almost everywhere he went. By 39, financial magazines called him one of the most successful real estate executives in the country. His company managed projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He flew across the nation for meetings, appeared at industry conferences, and signed contracts in offices overlooking city skylines. From the outside, it looked like he had everything a person could want. Yet success has a strange way of leaving certain questions unanswered. One rainy evening in Chicago, Nathan sat alone in his penthouse apartment after another 12-hour workday. The city lights stretched for miles beyond the windows. His phone buzzed with messages from investors, executives, and assistants. He ignored them all. Earlier that afternoon, he had received a call from his mother. It was one of their usual conversations, the kind that always seemed simple until she asked a question he could not easily answer. She had asked whether he was happy. Nathan had laughed at first. He talked about business growth, expansion plans, and future opportunities. His mother listened patiently before saying something that stayed with him long after the call ended. "You always tell me what you are building, Nathan. You never tell me who you are building it for." The question followed him throughout the evening. As he stared across the city, he found himself opening an old storage box that had traveled with him through every move since childhood. Inside were photographs, report cards, baseball cards, and souvenirs from a life that now felt very far away. At the bottom sat a folded piece of paper, worn from years of being handled. Nathan immediately recognized the handwriting. Claire. He unfolded it carefully. The ink had faded slightly, but her list of questions remained. What is your favorite class? What do you want to be when you grow up? Do you still remember Willow Creek? Nathan smiled despite himself. Then his smile slowly disappeared. He realized he had not spoken to Claire in years. Not months. Years. The thought bothered him more than he expected. Over the following weeks, the feeling refused to leave. During meetings, he found himself distracted. During flights, his thoughts drifted. Back to the lake and the old dock. Then, as if life had decided to stop giving him excuses, a major project scheduled for the next quarter was unexpectedly delayed. For the first time in years, Nathan had something he rarely possessed: time. One evening, he looked at a map on his office wall. His finger traced a route across several states until it reached a tiny dot most people would overlook: Willow Creek. The name alone stirred memories he thought had faded long ago. Without allowing himself time to overthink it, Nathan made a decision. He cleared his schedule, postponed non-essential meetings, and arranged to spend several weeks away from the city. Officially, it was a personal break. Unofficially, it was something else entirely. As his car rolled onto the highway a few days later, Nathan felt an unfamiliar mix of excitement and nervousness. Nearly 3 decades had passed since he left that small town. He had no idea what awaited him there. What he did know was that some promises never completely disappear, no matter how many years stand between the moment they are made and the day someone finally decides to return. The town looked smaller than Nathan remembered. As he drove beneath the familiar welcome sign for Willow Creek, memories appeared around every corner. The diner was still there. The church still stood at the center of town. Even the old hardware store remained unchanged. Time had moved forward, but somehow Willow Creek had managed to hold onto pieces of the past. Nathan spent his first day walking through streets he had not seen in nearly 3 decades. A few people recognized the Carter family name. Most did not recognize him at all. He found that oddly comforting. For once, nobody cared about company valuations or business headlines. Here, he was simply another face passing through town. Late that afternoon, he finally gathered the courage to ask about Claire. The answer came from an elderly woman working inside a bakery. "Claire Dawson?" she asked with a smile. "Of course I know Claire. Everybody knows Claire." Nathan felt his pulse quicken. "Is she still living here?" "Always has." The woman pointed down the street. "She owns the bookstore, near the town square." Nathan thanked her and stepped back outside. For a moment, he simply stood there staring toward the square. After all these years, she was real again. Not a memory. Not a faded name on an old piece of paper. Real. The walk to the bookstore took less than 5 minutes, though it felt much longer. As he approached, he noticed a charming storefront with flower boxes beneath the windows and a painted sign that read Dawson Books. Through the glass, he could see shelves lined with novels and a handful of customers browsing quietly. Then he saw her. Claire stood behind the counter helping an older customer. Her hair was longer now, and there were traces of maturity in her features, but Nathan recognized her immediately. Some part of him had expected the years to change everything. Instead, it felt as though he had found a familiar melody hidden inside a new song. He waited until the customer left. Then he opened the door. A small bell chimed overhead. Claire glanced up. For a second, neither of them moved. Nathan saw recognition appear in her eyes almost instantly. He smiled. "Claire." The smile never came. Her expression remained calm, almost unreadable. Nathan, hearing his name in her voice after so many years, felt surreal. He took another step forward. "It is really good to see you." Claire studied him quietly. "What are you doing here?" The question caught him off guard. He had imagined surprise, maybe even happiness. This was neither. "I came back to visit," he said, "and I wanted to see you." Her gaze did not soften. "After all this time?" Nathan hesitated. "I know it has been a long time. That is one way to describe it." The words were polite, but the distance behind them was impossible to miss. Silence settled between them. Finally, Claire looked toward the door. "I am about to close for the evening." Nathan nodded slowly. "Maybe we could have dinner sometime. Catch up." Claire considered the suggestion for only a moment. "I do not think that is a good idea." Before Nathan could respond, she walked around the counter and moved toward the back room. "Take care of yourself, Nathan." A second later, she disappeared from view. Nathan remained, standing alone in the bookstore, staring at the empty space where she had been. The woman he remembered had waited years for letters that eventually stopped coming. The woman standing before him now seemed determined to keep him at a distance. And for the first time since returning to Willow Creek, Nathan realized there was a story he did not know. Most people would have taken the hint and left town. Nathan considered it more than once during the next few days. Claire had made it painfully clear that she was not interested in reconnecting. Yet the more he thought about their brief conversation, the more something felt unfinished. Her reaction had not seemed angry. It had seemed guarded. There was a difference, and Nathan could not ignore it. 3 days later, he returned to Dawson Books. This time Claire looked less surprised to see him. That did not mean she looked happy. She stood behind the counter organizing a shipment of new arrivals, while soft music played through the store speakers. Nathan stopped a few feet away. "I was hoping we could talk." Claire continued arranging books. "About what?" "About why you seem to wish I had never come back." She paused briefly before placing another book on the shelf. "I do not wish that." "Then help me understand." For a moment neither spoke. Finally Claire set down the book and met his eyes. "You want honesty?" "Yes." "You left." Nathan nodded. "I know. Then you built a life somewhere else." "That is true. And now, after nearly 30 years, you suddenly come back expecting everything to pick up where it left off." Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but Claire shook her head. "That is not how life works." Her words were calm, yet each one landed with surprising weight. Nathan realized she was not talking only about the past. She was talking about trust. "I am not expecting that," he said quietly. "Then what are you expecting?" The question lingered between them. Nathan searched for an answer that sounded honest enough. "Maybe a chance." Claire studied him carefully. Then, to his surprise, she walked toward the front window and folded her arms. Several seconds passed before she spoke again. Do you know what people say about you? Nathan blinked. Probably different things, depending on who you ask. They say you are successful, wealthy, important. He shrugged. Some people might. Claire nodded. That is exactly the problem. Nathan frowned. I do not understand. Because people like you always have somewhere else to be. The statement stung more than he expected. Before he could respond, Claire turned to face him fully. If you are serious about wanting a chance, then prove you are not just passing through. Nathan felt his heartbeat quicken. How? Claire hesitated as though debating whether she should continue. Then she finally spoke. Stay. 6 months. Nathan stared at her. 6 months. Live here. Not as a visitor. Not as a businessman flying in and out. Live here. She stepped closer. No private jets. No executive meetings every other day. No disappearing when something more important comes along. Nathan could hardly believe what he was hearing. And if I do that? Claire's expression softened slightly, though not enough to reveal what she was truly thinking. Then maybe I will believe you came back for the right reasons. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. 6 months in Willow Creek would change everything. Yet beneath the challenge was something even more important. For the first time since returning, Claire was not pushing him away. She was giving him a choice. What Nathan did not realize was that this test had very little to do with time and everything to do with a secret Claire had been carrying for years. Most people spend their lives trying to escape small towns. Nathan Carter shocked nearly everyone he knew by choosing to stay in one. The phone calls started immediately. Business partners questioned his decision. Executives asked when he would return. Investors requested meetings. Nathan delegated what he could, postponed what he could not, and for the first time in decades allowed his life to slow down. Weeks passed, then a month. Instead of glass towers and conference rooms, his mornings began with coffee from the diner on Main Street. Instead of reviewing contracts during lunch, he walked through town and learned the names of people he had only vaguely remembered from childhood. Willow Creek was no longer a memory. It was becoming part of his daily life again. Claire noticed. She never said much about it, but Nathan could tell she was paying attention. Every few days he stopped by the bookstore. Sometimes they spoke for 5 minutes. Sometimes 20. The conversations remained polite, careful, and limited. Yet they were conversations, which felt like progress. Then one Saturday afternoon, everything changed because of a little girl. Nathan was helping move donated books into the community center when he heard laughter echoing across the parking lot. A young girl with bright eyes and chestnut-colored hair raced past carrying an armful of art supplies. She could not have been older than 8. Seconds later, Claire appeared behind her. Lily, slow down, she called. The girl stopped just long enough to grin. You always say that. Because you never listen. Nathan smiled as he watched the exchange. The warmth between them was impossible to miss. Lily suddenly noticed him. Who are you? She asked with complete confidence. Claire looked mildly embarrassed. Lily. What? I am just asking. Nathan laughed. My name is Nathan. Lily studied him suspiciously. Are you the guy who keeps coming to the bookstore? Claire closed her eyes for a second as though preparing for trouble. Lily. What? The girl repeated. Nathan found himself amused. Yes, I am that guy. Lily nodded thoughtfully. Okay, you seem nice. Before anyone could respond, she ran off toward the building. Nathan watched her disappear inside. She has a lot of energy, he said. Claire smiled. It was the first completely natural smile Nathan had seen from her since returning. That is one way to describe her. The expression vanished almost as quickly as it appeared, but Nathan had noticed it. More importantly, he had noticed something else. Whenever Lily was around, Claire seemed different. Lighter. Happier. More open. Over the next several weeks, Nathan crossed paths with the girl repeatedly. At community events. At the bookstore. At the park near the lake. Lily talked to everyone and seemed determined to include Nathan in every conversation. Before long, he found himself looking forward to their unexpected encounters. Yet one question continued to linger in the back of his mind. Lily clearly meant a great deal to Claire. The bond between them was unmistakable, but no one ever explained exactly who she was. Every time Nathan came close to asking, something stopped him. Perhaps it was the guarded look that occasionally returned to Claire's eyes whenever the subject drifted toward family. Whatever the reason, he sensed there was a story beneath the surface, and that story might explain far more than Claire had been willing to tell him so far. By the beginning of the 4th month, Nathan had become part of Willow Creek in a way he never expected. He volunteered at community events, helped organize fundraising projects, and spent more afternoons at Dawson Books than he could count. The town no longer viewed him as a visitor. He belonged there. Even Claire seemed less guarded. Not completely, but enough that Nathan occasionally caught glimpses of the person he remembered from childhood. Those moments never lasted long, yet they gave him hope. The biggest surprise, however, was Lily. Somehow the energetic 8-year-old had inserted herself into his daily routine. She appeared everywhere. If Nathan was at the bookstore, Lily was usually nearby reading in a corner. If he was helping at a town event, she would eventually show up carrying questions, stories, or observations that only a child could invent. One afternoon, they sat at a picnic table near the lake while Claire helped prepare for a charity event nearby. Lily was drawing pictures with colored pencils while Nathan attempted to guess what they were supposed to be. "That one is a dog," she said. "That looks like a cloud. It is an artistic dog." Nathan laughed. "My mistake." Lily grinned and returned to drawing. After a few minutes, she spoke again without looking up. "Claire likes you." Nathan nearly dropped his coffee. "What?" "I said Claire likes you." Nathan glanced toward the event tent where Claire was working. "And what makes you think that?" Lily shrugged. "Because she smiles more when you are around." Nathan found himself smiling. "You notice things." "I notice everything." The confidence in her voice made him laugh again. Then Lily grew unusually quiet. She continued coloring for several seconds before asking a question. "Did you know Claire when she was younger?" "A long time ago." "Before me?" Nathan nodded. "Long before you." Lily seemed satisfied with the answer. Yet the question lingered in Nathan's thoughts long after the conversation ended. Later that week, he finally received part of the answer he had been searching for. An elderly librarian named Margaret had known Claire for years. While organizing donated books together, Nathan casually mentioned Lily. Margaret smiled warmly. "Those two have been inseparable for a long time. They seem very close." "They are." Nathan hesitated. "Family." Margaret's smile softened. "Not by blood." Nathan looked surprised. Margaret carefully returned a book to the shelf. Claire became Lily's guardian several years ago after a difficult period in the child's life. Nathan processed the information slowly. Suddenly many things made sense. The protectiveness, the responsibility, the devotion. Yet another question immediately replaced the first. Why had Claire taken on such a life-changing role? That evening, Nathan walked home beneath the fading colors of sunset. As he passed the bookstore, he noticed Claire inside helping Lily arrange books on a display table. The child laughed at something Claire said. Claire laughed too. The sight stopped him in his tracks. There was love in that relationship. Not the kind measured by biology, but the kind measured by choice, sacrifice, and commitment. For the first time, Nathan began to understand that Claire's life had become far more complicated than he ever imagined. And if she had built that life by carrying responsibilities most people would avoid, then perhaps her reluctance to trust promises was rooted in something much deeper than his absence. As the 6th month approached, Nathan began to realize that Claire's challenge had changed him far more than he expected. When he first arrived in Willow Creek, he viewed the town through the lens of nostalgia. Now he viewed it through the people who lived there. He cared about the bookstore. He cared about the community center. He cared about the neighbors whose names he knew by heart. Most of all, he cared about Claire and Lily. That realization became impossible to ignore one evening when Nathan received a phone call from Chicago. The call came from his executive team, and the news was significant. A major investment group wanted to move forward on a project that could become the largest deal in company history. The opportunity would require Nathan's direct involvement. Meetings were already being scheduled. Negotiations would begin within days. His team expected him to return immediately. Hours later, Nathan sat alone on the old dock overlooking the lake. The same dock where 2 children had once made promises about the future. The water remained calm, but his thoughts did not. Professionally, the decision should have been simple. The project represented years of effort and enormous potential. Walking away would surprise everyone who knew him. Yet for the first time in his adult life, the choice did not feel simple at all. The next morning, he visited the bookstore. Claire noticed almost immediately that something was different. "You seem distracted," she said while arranging a display near the front entrance. Nathan considered avoiding the subject, but decided against it. "Chicago called." Claire paused. "That sounds important." "It is." He explained the opportunity as briefly as possible. Claire listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded. Then you should go. Nathan stared at her. That is your advice? It is your career. And what if I do not want to leave? Claire looked away. People do not walk away from opportunities like that. Maybe some do. The conversation ended there, but the expression on Claire's face stayed with him. She looked disappointed before he had even made a decision. 3 days later, the situation became even more complicated. Lily arrived at the bookstore unusually quiet. Anyone who knew her could tell something was wrong. Eventually, Nathan learned she was struggling with an important school presentation and feeling overwhelmed. Claire spent hours helping her prepare, offering encouragement every step of the way. Watching them together, Nathan finally understood something that had been slowly revealing itself for months. Claire's entire life was built around showing up when someone needed her. Every decision she made reflected that principle. Every sacrifice, every responsibility. She stayed. She committed. She remained present. The realization hit him harder than any business negotiation ever could. That evening, Nathan called his executive team. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. When it ended, he had delegated leadership of the project to others and removed himself from the negotiations entirely. The decision would cost him influence, opportunities, and potentially millions of dollars. Yet when he hung up the phone, he felt unexpectedly at peace. The following day, he told Claire what he had done. For several seconds, she simply stared at him. You gave it up? She asked quietly. Nathan nodded. I chose to stay. Something changed in her eyes at that moment. Not complete trust. Not yet. But the walls she had spent years building suddenly seemed less certain. And for the first time, Nathan sensed that Claire was no longer testing whether he would leave. She was struggling to believe that he actually would not. 2 days after Nathan told Claire he was staying, she asked him to meet her at the lake just before sunset. The message was brief, but it was the first time she had invited him anywhere since his return to Willow Creek. Nathan arrived early. The evening air carried the familiar scent of water and pine trees, and the surface of the lake reflected the fading colors of the sky. As he stood at the edge of the dock, memories returned with surprising clarity. The place looked almost exactly as it had when they were children. A few minutes later, Claire appeared. She walked slowly toward him, her hands tucked into the pockets of a light jacket. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Claire looked out across the water and smiled faintly. I used to come here whenever life became complicated. Nathan glanced at her. Still do. Sometimes. The silence that followed felt different from the silences they had shared before. It no longer felt defensive. It felt honest. Finally, Claire took a deep breath. You asked me once why I kept pushing you away. Nathan nodded. I remember. She stared at the lake for several seconds before continuing. After you left, I believed every promise you made. Her voice remained calm, but Nathan could hear the emotion beneath it. At first, the letters helped. Then they became less frequent. Then they stopped. Nathan lowered his eyes. I know. I told myself you were busy. I told myself life happens. She gave a small laugh. The truth is, I spent years learning not to expect people to stay. Nathan listened quietly. Claire continued. Then Lily came into my life. She needed stability. She needed someone she could count on. From that moment forward, I made a decision. I would never build my future around words alone. The pieces finally came together. Nathan understood now. The test had never been about 6 months. It had never been about Willow Creek. It had been about reliability, commitment, presence. Claire turned toward him. When you first came back, I thought you were chasing a memory. I thought eventually something more important would pull you away. Nathan met her eyes. And now, for the first time, tears shimmered gently in her eyes. Now I think I was wrong. The words landed with more force than any business victory he had ever experienced. Claire reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small object. Nathan immediately recognized it. A faded friendship bracelet made from colorful plastic strings. The one he had given her before moving away. You kept it? He asked softly. Claire smiled. All these years. Nathan laughed quietly in disbelief. I cannot believe that survived. Neither can I. They stood there smiling until another voice suddenly interrupted them. I knew it. Both turned to find Lily standing a few feet away with a triumphant expression. You two take forever. Claire covered her face while Nathan burst out laughing. Lily marched onto the dock and folded her arms. So are we finally being honest now? The question made all three laugh. As the sun settled beyond the horizon, Nathan looked at Claire, then at Lily, and realized something remarkable. The future he had spent years searching for was not waiting in another city. It was standing right in front of him. Several months later, family, friends, and neighbors gathered beside the lake to celebrate a wedding that felt less like a beginning and more like the completion of a journey. As Nathan and Claire exchanged vows, Lily stood proudly nearby with the biggest smile in Willow Creek. And when the ceremony ended, Nathan glanced toward the old dock where two children had once imagined an impossible future. In the end, the promise had survived because it was no longer just a promise. It had become a choice made every day by two people who finally understood that the most meaningful kind of love is not proven by words, but by staying.